Have you ever been investigating an incident or an alert? You come across an encoded command and then you sit there for a while flipping between windows doing research, trying to figure out what that command is doing? Let's find out how we made that easier in today's Tanium Tech Talks. Welcome back to Tanium Tech Talks. Today we're talking threat response and some exciting features. With me today, as always, is my wonderful co-host, Jesh Sachs.
Alex, thank you so much. And I am excited for this interview today. We have Duncan Miller with us to talk a little bit about some of our favorite security features. I don't want to spoil all the good stuff. Duncan, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Duncan Miller. I'm thrilled to be here today. I've been here at Tanium for over 9 years now. I came in as a technical account manager, working with customers. Shortly afterwards, I was leading our IR subject matter expert team. While that still existed as a separate thing, then helped stand up our threat response subject matter expert team. Moved over to our endpoint security specialist team. And then earlier, well, I guess a little over a year ago now, joined our Hunt IQ Hunters program and working directly in customer environments, hands-on keyboard, helping customers actually solve and use Tanium day to day. But throughout the whole time I've been here, my focus has largely been on two things: helping customers get the most out of Tanium for their security use cases, and then helping the product figure out how to better solve our customer security use cases. And the role I'm in now, that is a fantastic thing I get to combine because it's not just talking to customers about how they use Tanium, it's actually using Tanium to solve these use cases for customers. So instead of saying, click here, ask this question, go do this, they give me a problem, then using Tanium, I go and solve the problem for them.
That
Yeah.
is so cool. I know Jesh is just as excited today to talk to you as I am. We both have security backgrounds. I'm glad we all started as technical account managers at Tanium. That's really exciting. And I know, what we're talking about today. To give a little backstory, I used to work in a SOC, and so often, you start digging into logs and stuff, you see encoded commands everywhere. So when you told me about this feature, I was really excited because a lot of my time in the past was spent trying to figure out, trying to reverse an encoded command or trying to Google and figure out what it was doing. So this is really exciting.
Yeah.
Jesh, thoughts?
Honestly, I'm just excited to jump in and show people. So, Duncan, if you wanna pull up and start guiding us through what is this new feature that we are so thrilled about.
Absolutely. So there's two new features within threat response, and we'll start by looking at alerts. All right. So if I come in and I open up an alert pane, same way that I always would, we're going to see here, I've got an alert that is running an encoded PowerShell command. We can see the command line is PowerShell execution policy bypass, and then the dash C, and then the PowerShell dash inc, along with the encoded command line. Now down here, I have this enrich button, right? And if I click on this, this is going to do a lot more than just decode the encoded piece. That's definitely a part of what it's going to do, but it's going to tell me about everything that this particular command line is doing, right? So if I come down here, I can see that here's the actual command line that it reviewed. Here it gives me a summary of what that command line is actually doing. And then it breaks down the individual components to tell me what each one of these is doing, right? So execution policy bypass. It overrides the current machine user execution policy for this session to allow all scripts and commands to run, right? So it's telling you that this is something that is a higher risk component just by that. And it gives you a security implication, right? Frequently used in malicious contexts to evade policy-based controls. It continues to do this for every component of that command line. So it's breaking it down and telling you what it does. Now, when we get to the inner PowerShell command, it's also decoding that and repeating this, right? So, and then it gives us finally our payload. It tells us this decodes to echo get UAC. So it's going to execute that echo get UAC command, and then it's going to tell you what those components do. The interesting part here is this get UAC. So this command substitution that runs and inserts its output, get UAC, is not a built-in commandlet and likely a custom function. All right, so it's telling us that this isn't a standard part of PowerShell. It's unusual that we're seeing this. Then it, again, like it did previously, it will allow us to tell us what this likely is and what the likely security implications are. Right. So UAC state checks are common in attacker tradecraft, investigate source of get UAC, and preceding activity for potential staging. So then we can explore this and ask. Right. So this lets us open an interactive session if we have more thoughts about what this particular command line does. But if I go to explore and ask, this is only going to open it for just this one command line. If I want to know what this alert as a whole means, I can come up here and click analyze. And so this is going to take that whole alert as our context, and it's going to give us a summary of what this alert does. One of the really annoying things about looking at alerts in general is we'll come in and we'll be like, okay, I've got this alert that fired, right? I've got this command line, I've got this process command line. Why did it fire? Right? I see that these things happened, but all I have are data points. I'm lacking any contextualization, right? If I want to know what caused it to fire, first I have to come down to the intel, right? And then I have to look at my Intel details and I can see, okay, this has a process path that ends with PowerShell. It's hidden by my Ask window right now, but it was launched from Chrome. It had Chrome in its ancestry. So
Mm.
that tells me, okay, let's go up to my ancestry and see why it hit. All right, so now I'm looking for Chrome in the ancestry. I can see that watch Chrome, then PowerShell, then some more PowerShell, and eventually the one that I'm looking at now. With our alert summarization, on the other hand, over here, we get our initial alert overview, right? What caused this to hit? So we can see this is an alert that indicates Google Chrome spawned a descendant PowerShell process. First thing it does is tell me exactly why it hit, right? Then it tells me why that's significant. And then it moves on through my key findings. So key findings, these are things that it sees in here that are unusual. So it takes all of that information, that full ancestry, the command line, everything that's in the alert, and it highlights the things that are unusual. Again, we can see that we've got our parent binary of C:user Splunky is unusual. We've got a domain that it communicated with. We've got file hashes associated with the different binaries that are involved with this activity. We get our command line indicators, so things in the command line that we might want to look for elsewhere in the environment as well. They may not be launched the same way, but if we see this get UAC and we determine this one actually is malicious, we're probably going to want to know where else we have that same PowerShell commandlet executing whatever it was launched from, right? Because this was only triggered because of the ancestry. We get our user console.
Duncan.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, as you're going through all of this, I want to make sure I can even digest this as we go through. So all we've got so far is, and I'm looking at this, it's beautiful. So first off, we've got in the alert itself, we've got the context for specific command lines where you can go in, it decodes it, it gives you the context to tell you, hey, this is what it's doing, which I love as someone who's been like kind of that junior analyst looking at things and not knowing the context yet for so many things that you get experience in over the years. And it's really easy to look at after you've done this for years and years and say, oh, I know what that is. But especially for our junior people, I feel like this can help level them up so quickly because it shortens that learning curve by not making them go out and find everything. It kind of presents it to you right there and says, hey, here's what you got. And then in addition to that, you said we've got the analyze up here that does the whole alert. So now we're outside of just one PowerShell or one little command line, but now we're saying the intel, the context on the endpoint, what happened, what's the context, what should I be looking for? Is that right?
That's absolutely right. But for command lines, the first time I actually used the enrichment feature was the other place it exists that we'll look at in a moment, which is in a direct connection. Right? It was actually for looking at a browser command line. I don't know if you've ever looked at a browser command line, but Chrome and Edge, it's almost impossible to understand what's going on and what all the different things mean. And those aren't things that I've spent a lot of time looking at in the past. So, having spent years looking at these things, there are still cases where I don't know what this command line means. Right. So, being able to not have to leave my workflow, to stay within my workflow and say, okay, I'm looking at this, just tell me what this means, and have it come up is a huge time saver. Because if I have to leave here and go ask an LLM looking Google to see what this particular command line means, I'm leaving here and I'm increasing my chances of losing my context for when I come back. Right. So what was I looking at? What was the thing before this? What were the things after this I was planning on doing? I'm trying to keep all of that straight while I'm leaving the console to go someplace else. Keeping the context within the console lets you keep your focus and not have to re-remember what you were trying to do beforehand. So I find it amazingly helpful.
Yeah, and just to piggyback a little on what Jesh was saying as well, because that's where my mind went. Jesh and I are both in enablement now, and she went right to junior
Yeah.
analyst, and that's where I was too, right? 10 years ago working out of a sim, you were always missing context, and we had to go figure that out on our own.
Yeah.
I worked with tools that had proprietary definitions, right? So you couldn't, hey, this fired, but even if I like went to their website and stuff, it wouldn't tell you why it fired. It would, so gone are those days, and this is really exciting because you could learn so much, right? As long as you have the
Yeah.
appropriate background and foundation with all of this information, you could learn so much so quickly.
Absolutely. It's absolutely one of the bringing junior analysts up to skill is one of the main reasons that this feature exists, right? We have a huge shortfall of security workers still. So, and especially skilled security workers, we have a high burnout rate in the industry as well. So, making sure that we have a concrete way of bringing people up to skill is necessary for everyone. Those are huge problems that we don't have great ways of solving today. We're not going to suddenly get an influx of new people that are skilled security analysts. So we have to be able to have everyone working at a higher level, whether they're entry level, whether they're median, whether they're your mid-tier folks, or whether they're your incident responders that know tons. Everyone is going to run into things they don't know. So while yes, it's absolutely useful for junior analysts for upskilling them, for making sure that they can work more effectively. It's equally useful for your really complex things that your senior analysts are running into. This is a feature that I would use consistently in customers where it's enabled, right? Not because I don't know a lot of what's happening, but because I can only carry so many things around in my head, right?
Mm.
And that's not going to be everything. There's always going to be cases where I'm looking at something that I haven't encountered before. So understanding what that means and contextualizing it, understanding what it means, not just the individual item, but like for these alerts, understanding them in the context of everything around them, being able to do a quick risk assessment. In fact, coming back to this analyze piece, my favorite parts are actually the parts we haven't talked about yet. The impact assessment. How widespread is this, right? Is this just this one machine? Is this something I really need to worry about? And then my recommended actions. What should we do? I may not always agree with the recommended actions, right? The first thing they're recommending here is isolating the endpoint. Well, that's really, you need to know a lot about the environment and the machine before you isolate the machine. If this is a key domain controller and I isolate it, I may be having problems that day, right? If this is a revenue generating machine, I may be costing the company millions of dollars a minute if I isolate it. So I absolutely need to know some context about what this machine is before I do that. But it's still a sensible recommendation, right? If this is an individual's workstation, there's a decent chance I'm going to want to isolate it to cut down on any C2 communication. Terminate and quarantine the SQL and users Splunk and block outbound traffic to the associated domain. Yeah, that's absolutely something I'm going to want to do.
Yeah,
Uh,
generally, if I see C2.evil, I'm gonna get a
yeah,
little nervous, but
exactly. Reset my credentials associated with this. These are all sensible recommendations based on what we're seeing within this. You have to contextualize them within your environment and this machine and the things that you know about your environment that the Ask Agent doesn't, but they still make sense as what we want to do.
yeah. So actually, you just mentioned something I wanted to bring up. You brought up the Ask Agent, so I know that's not available to absolutely everybody. But I also saw, you did use our AI agent in there to get some contextualization. How does that work with like tokens and things like, the big buzzwords of the day?
Yeah.
Is there a charge or?
So the way that our Ask agent works right now, there's no additional charge. So if you're licensed for threat response, you're a cloud customer, and you have the AI features turned on, then these features are available to you, and you can currently use them as much as you can. That plan may change in the future. I've got no insight into that. But today, these just require you own threat response, you're in the cloud, and you have the AI features enabled in the environment.
That's fantastic.
What I'm hearing is use it and use it fast. So
Yes, use it as much as you can.
I love this. The
Yeah.
now I am curious. So we've got number five, the hunt for IOCs across the environment here. That bottom recommendation is that type of thing something we could even follow up with Ask to help us identify which IOCs we should be hunting for?
Well, let's ask it and see. We'll give it a second to come back and see what it says. But in general, um, Ask has done a pretty good job of identifying what we actually want to look up within it. So, yep, here we go. We've got the domain URL. We want to look for this file path, this C: users public Splunk, the file hash associated with it. We want process lineage patterns, so Chrome launching command, launching PowerShell, uh, possibly execution policy bypass, dash enc within our PowerShell command line, and then some additional flags that actually were in Ancestry, but not within the thing that triggered this specific alert. And then possible flag, and then additional network indicators again, which are going back to our domain and port. So it does a very good job of like breaking those out and letting you know what they are. The other thing to note is that almost all of these, there are some differences, but almost all of these were actually in their key finding details within the IOCs. Some of the command line information wasn't, but the rest of it, the hashes, the network connections, this fact that there's this weird Splunk file, all of those were things that it highlighted initially.
Huh. If if I had something like that, Josh, I don't know about you. If I had something like this, I'd probably still be on the security side of the house.
Yeah, this is absolutely amazing. I love being able to see this, and I want to go play in our little demo environment to take a look more. All right, what haven't we talked about yet with these
Yeah,
new
so if
features?
we jump to a direct connection, we have the same kind of capability, right? So here you can see within the process details that I can enrich the things that are within this specific process. When I direct connected, it did something odd, but we can see that we've got our PowerShell in this case. It's a different PowerShell, or no, it's ProcDump in this case, that was launched by PowerShell. And then it's targeting LSAS. So that's also something that I would be very interested in. Now, from here, I can do the same kind of enrichment, right? I can say, okay, let's see what um, what this does, and it gives me the exact same type of thing, again, with all of the parameters that are associated. Target process LSAS. It's telling me what LSAS is if I don't know, right? So again, when you're talking about upskilling, you're getting that ability to understand exactly what you're looking at. Here within the data grid, I get the same kind of enrichment ability. Any place you see these sparkles, that's one of our AI features. All right, so here I can do the same kind of enrichment on command line. In fact, let's take a look
I
for,
actually love that too because a junior, a junior analyst might not, for a lot of us, you see LSAS, you think process dump, and you're like, oh no. But for a brand new person that might not have really kicked in yet,
yep, exactly. All right. So here I get the same kind of capabilities. So in this case, if I want to see what this Microsoft Edge update is doing, I just click on it and it gets me an enrichment again with all of the command lines. What does the slash UA mean for Microsoft Edge update? I couldn't tell you that. I don't spend much time looking at it, right? So it's typically update all or update apps, instructing the updater to update all registered applications. So this is some kind of an update, making sure that all of the apps that are installed with Edge are up to date. And then my install source scheduler. I can guess at what that is, but I don't know what it is. All
Mhm.
right. Specifies the install update invocation source as scheduler, indicating the run was triggered by a scheduled task. So if this is something I'm curious about, now I know I need to go look at my scheduled tasks and see what was happening. All right. So I'm very easily able to say, okay, this came from a scheduled task. And often that's quite tricky to figure out, right? Is what's tied back to my scheduled tasks.
You know, just even you jumping into this different view and going through these things, I adore so much because getting alert contextualization is one thing because we get the data from the alert, but it's a limited view, right? It's just the things that triggered that alert. And we as Tanium keep so much of this historical data on not just what suspicious things happened, but what happened, period, on the endpoint. And so you connect it and you see that full history. And even if it's directly associated with the alert or not, to your point, you just did some custom filters in here to find things. And we can enrich any single one of those. So it just broadens out how we can use this, which I absolutely adore.
Yeah, I would say look for the sparkles. And if you see the sparkles, you can get more context around it.
Look for the sparkles. I love it.
Fantastic. Duncan, thank you so much for sharing with us today. We learned about enrichment and more detail than I ever could have expected to hope for out of just a single alert. Things, oh man, sometimes you see new tech and you're like, oh, back in my day, I really wish I had this thing. And man, that would have been fantastic. So, once again, thank you so much for joining us today, Duncan, and sharing with us. Jesh, thank you as always for being an amazing co host. Thank you, Tech Talkers, for joining us for this exciting episode. We love talking about security, and we hope to see you next time on Tanium Tech Talks.
Yay.